And I say, hey, yo, just let it go. Your struggles won't remain. And I say, hey, yo, we're holding hope and wake up yesterday. Hold on to me.
The E46 M3 is now 17 years old, and in that time it has achieved a near mythical status, and it is regarded as one of the greatest BMW M cars of all time. So, let's start off by discussing the E46 convertibles a little bit. You're going to be gaining 400 pounds over the coupe for a total curb weight of over 3,800 pounds. Now, the two factors that work to make this car gain 400 pounds over the coupe is the complex folding mechanism for the top and the need to strengthen the chassis, because you lose a lot of rigidity when you take the roof off of one of these cars. It was originally designed to be a coupe and a sedan. That's what the E46 was. When you start taking the roof off of it, you lose an entire element of the chassis rigidity. So in order to remedy that slightly, you have to begin supporting the chassis down at the bottom. You're adding weight down there through the means of steel supports, and that's where a lot of the weight comes from. Now, also unfortunately, is that doesn't completely solve the issue of cowl shake or cowl flex. It still is very noticeable on the street if you're going over uneven pavement and the likes. It's not awful, but it is something to keep in mind, because you may notice it if you're going from a hardtop or you're going from a roadster that was specifically designed without the top. So let's go ahead and wrap up the convertible discussion. If you want a hardcore track toy, go with the coupe. It's going to be lighter, it's going to be more rigid, and you're not going to have to put up with the restrictions on track of having to put a roll cage in it, most likely. However, on a day like today, if it's mainly going to be a street car, the convertible is certainly an option to consider. It gets you closer to the driving experience, and it gets you closer to the sound of this inline six. So let me introduce you to the heart of the E46 M3. The S54 inline six, a 3.2 liter naturally aspirated individual throttle body screamer of an inline six. 8,000 RPM redline, peak power at 7,800 RPM. This car loves to be wound out. But before we get into too many of the specifics and how this one's been modified, let's go ahead and go for a drive. Stock limiter is way up at 8,000 RPM. You get peak power at 7,800, peak torque at 5,500. This is a car that needs to be wound out to be enjoyed completely. And I really do mean that. You have to wind this thing out to get anything out of it. So here we go to 3,500, second gear. 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, boom, third gear. It's just an animal. Lose some of that. You lose some of that character in the new ones, you really do. With the turbocharged motors, they don't build like this. This linear power band is something that we're losing these days, and it's sad. There's good reasons for it, and we won't dwell on it, but that is something to keep in mind. This is one of the last cars, the S62 V8, the S85 V10, the V8 in the M3, and this S54. They're the last of their breed. You're not going to be seeing engines like this again, and this is one of the greatest inline sixes that BMW ever created. Now, you may be thinking that BMW had to sacrifice low-down torque to achieve this very linear, high-revving power band, but in fact, that's the opposite. When they engineered this engine, they wanted it to be drivable on a daily basis. They wanted it to still be super functional, and what they did was they made 80% of peak torque available from as low as 2,000 RPM. So let's get it out of the way, go ahead and go through what modifications this specific car has. This has status group catless racing headers, Megan Racing axle back exhaust, a stage 2 clutch, a lightweight flywheel, Dynon stage 3 tune, and the reinforced subframe, because that had to be done. That's kind of maintenance, but also we had poly bushings put back there. And you want to make it a bit louder, my recommendation would be to hold off until you can do headers at the same time. You can do your research on your own, but go online, look up just louder M3 or any other exhaust work done. It is tinny, it is raspy, it is high-pitched, and it is not aggressive in the slightest. But if you want to go loud, my recommendation, get a decent set of headers. Status Group makes good ones for around $800. That's a great deal. They're made really well for that value. And then make it a bit louder after you do the headers, because you will love the sound of it over stock, and definitely over just making it louder. Like a muffler delete or something without that, they sound like shit. I'll just put it out there. They do not sound good. Headers should be one of the first things on your list. So then, as legendary as the S54 is, that's not the only thing this car is known for. It's also known for its handling. And I've got to say, this is a balanced car. It's easy to drive, but it's still so exciting. It just never scares you. It's not a car that's going to terrify you to drive quickly, as long as you know what you're doing. If you've driven quick cars before, and you have any kind of car control, this is a car that is going to dance with you. It is really not going to try to bite you. Owning a Z4M myself, I know cars that try to bite you, and that is one of them. This is so much more progressive in everything that it does. The way that the diff is set up, the way that it's so balanced. If it starts to slide, it's so progressive and so easy to catch. So up the front, understeer is pretty much non-existent on the street as long as you're running a decent tire. You would have to chuck this thing around to get it to plow whatsoever. As far as oversteer is concerned, it's very planted. You can get it to come out if you're really aggressive with the way you're driving or from a stop. But other than that, this thing just sticks. It just sticks. It is very flat in the corners, even with the stock suspension. Now, the other thing for me is that the inputs are all so good too. The pedals are perfectly spaced for heel-toe downshifts. The steering wheel is fantastic. The steering itself is also fantastic. It's not overweighted. It's very direct. Now, let's get specific to the convertible. You do notice the extra weight when you're driving it hard. Less so on the street than on the track. I've autocrossed this car before, and I noticed the weight for sure there. It felt heavy. On the street, it does not feel heavy. It hides its weight very well from only weighing 200 pounds less than the E39 M5 thereabouts. It hides its weight very, very well. On the street, I have no qualms with the convertible whatsoever, handling-wise. Honestly, the top down on a beautiful day with an aftermarket exhaust, I don't know of many other cars, especially at this price point, that I'd rather be driving. Now then, many modern reviewers are going to tell you that the interior on these is what really dates them. And personally, I'm not so sure. If you spec it right and you get the right color combinations and the right material combinations, I think that it is actually quite timeless. The simplicity of this car is what you want in a driver's car. At least that's what I personally think. For a driver's car, I want it to be simple. I want it to be driver's focused, which this is. It's classic BMW styling in here. As far as what dates it, personally, I think that technology is what dates car interiors far quicker than anything else, than the design or anything like that. You get a head unit, you get a touchscreen head unit with all sorts of GPS and everything. That's outdated the next year, the next model year, next anything. Whereas nice materials, good leathers, good seats, a well-designed interior can stand the test of time, and I think this is one of those. There's nothing that really dates it. There's not a lot of tech that really dates it. You've got heated seats, you've got nice brushed aluminum. I think that it's standing the test of time very well, and to be 17 years old, I think it's very modern looking. So I think to wrap things up, how about you just watch how this thing drives for a little bit. So then there's a reason that these cars are so legendary. You get a masterpiece of an engine, you get sharp handling, and you get classic BMW styling, all for an affordable price. So are there faster cars for the money? Sure, of course. But is there a whole package that for 15 I'd rather have in my garage? Not so sure there is.